Welcome to StaalX Construction and Steel Podcast. Episode 9, Data Centers Mask Construction Weakness and How to Fix the Housing Crisis. Before we start, a quick shout out to StaalX, the smarter way to source steel. Whether you're buying rebar, wire rods, or mesh, you can now get instant pricing, make an offer directly online, and track your orders, all in one place. Check out our new walkthrough video, How to Use StaalX, and see how easy it is to get started at StaalX.com.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're sifting through a few sources that they really paint a paradoxical picture of the construction economy.
You really do.
We're seeing industry confidence numbers that are slipping, but at the same time, demand for some really specific high-tech projects is just surging.
And that paradox is the exact friction point we need to dig into. The sources we have from the Associated Builders and Contractors, the Center for American Progress, and StaalX, they show an industry getting pulled in two totally different directions.
So you have a national housing crisis on one side.
Exactly. A crisis that's colliding directly with this massive industrial demand. That is, driving up the cost of every single thing you'd need to solve it.
So our mission today is to give you the clearest possible view of this whole conflicted ecosystem. We'll unpack contractor sentiment, then look at a proposed solution for the 2 million home shortage, and finally tie it all to the raw materials market.
Okay, let's do it. So the pulse check from the ABC data. They track the construction backlog indicator, the CBI.
Right, which is basically how many months of work contractors have lined up.
Exactly. And in October, that number fell a little bit to 8.4 months.
A little bit being, what, a tenth of a month? So it's basically flat year over year.
It is. But the sentiment is what's really telling here. The feeling on the ground is so much worse than that tiny dip would suggest.
Yeah, I saw that. We learned that nearly 2/3, something like 65% of contractors surveyed believe the U.S. construction industry is actually contracting right now.
Which is a huge sign of anxiety. I mean, if you look at their expectations for profit margins and staffing, they're still technically above 50, which signals growth.
But barely, and they're all pointing down.
Right, so why the pessimism? They're looking past their current work and seeing, rising interest rates, tougher financing. They see a slowdown coming, even if it's not fully in the CBI yet.
And that gets us to the real distortion in the market, doesn't it? If everyone's so pessimistic, why isn't that backlog number dropping off a cliff?
Because that 8.4-month average is being held up almost artificially by a few sectors that are just red hot.
We're talking about manufacturing construction, right? Chip plants, battery factories.
That's part of it, for sure. But the biggest, most aggressive driver mentioned in the sources is the data center sector. I mean, it is just surging.
The statistics on this are wild.
They are. Contractors who are focused on building these massive data centers, their average backlog is 10.9 months.
Almost 11 months of guaranteed work.
Exactly. Now compare that to everyone else. Contractors not working on data centers, their backlog is just 8.0 months.
So data centers are basically masking a widespread weakness in the rest of the market.
They're pulling so much activity forward that they're keeping the whole average from collapsing. It creates this very strong, but also very narrow buffer for the commercial market.
Which is such a stark contrast to the massive widespread pain we see in the residential sector. Let's pivot to the national housing crisis, because the numbers here are, they're just devastating.
Yeah, they show a profound affordability crunch. Since the pandemic started, home prices are up nearly 55%, and rent is up over 30% nationally.
And that has a real human cost. About a third of all American households are now officially housing costs burdened, spending over 30% of their income just on housing.
It's completely reshaped. Who can even think about buying a home?
I know. The median age for a first-time home buyer is now 40. 40 years old. I mean, that's the highest on record.
And it was 31 just a decade ago. That's a 9-year delay in building wealth and starting a family home. It's intense societal stress.
And it all comes back to a failure of supply, right? We just stopped building after 2008.
Severely, yeah. The Center for American Progress report puts a number on it. The nation is currently short about 2 million homes.
2 million. How do they even calculate a number that big? What does that break down into?
Well, they divide it into two main buckets. First, you have 1.2 million homes needed for what they call pent-up households.
So people who would move out or form their own household if they could actually afford to.
Exactly. Young adults living with parents, couples who want to split up. The other 800,000 homes are just to get vacancy rates back to a normal, healthy level.
Okay, so CAP proposes closing that entire 2 million unit gap in just 5 years. That sounds incredibly ambitious.
It is ambitious. They acknowledge that.
Yeah.
It would require a huge policy shift, which is why their $95 billion investment goal is tied directly to their supply-side proposals.
Which brings us to their central idea, the Rent Relief for Reform program, the R3 program.
Correct. And this is really designed to get around that classic not in my backyard or NMBY problem.
The local zoning politics.
Right. So the policy targets these designated housing cost crisis zones.
Yeah.
And the incentive is powerful. If local governments in those zones remove their restrictive zoning barriers, allow multifamily housing, get rid of a huge minimum lot sizes.
And the federal government steps in.
And provides immediate direct relief to renters. We're talking annual rent relief payments of up to $1,000 per renter household.
So it creates a direct political win for local leaders. They can point to actual cash in their constituents' pockets as a result of their zoning reform.
It connects the abstract pain of zoning fights to a very tangible, immediate reward.
Beyond the zoning, they also talk about lowering the actual cost of building, specifically tariffs.
Yes, and this links everything back to the high costs we're seeing everywhere. CAP points out that tariffs on essential materials, steel, lumber, gypsum, have driven up construction costs.
So they propose exempting key residential building materials from some of those tariffs.
And the savings, the numbers are huge. CAP estimates that Measure alone could save $135 billion in residential construction costs over 5 years.
Which for a first-time homebuyer, they calculate, could mean saving around $24,000 on their first home. That's a life-changing amount of money.
It's a huge boost. But this whole idea of cutting costs leads us right back into the brutal reality of the supply chain right now.
And to the StaalX report on the steel market.
Exactly. Because that surging industrial demand, that data center boom we talked about, is slamming right into the raw materials market. Rebar, for example.
The steel you need for the massive foundations for these projects.
Yeah. And that market is incredibly tight. Mills are selling out their entire production runs, their rollings, well into January.
And what's fascinating is why the price is going up. The report noted that scrap costs, the raw ingredient, have been stable.
They have.
But the domestic mills just raise prices over a single weekend by $30 a short ton. So if their costs didn't change, why the huge jump?
Pure demand management. It was a rationing mechanism. They had so many orders coming in for these huge projects that they basically had to hit the brakes by making it more expensive.
And they can do that because the market is so fragile.
It's artificially tight. You've got, for one, a pending anti-dumping case against rebar from places like Egypt and Vietnam. That makes foreign sellers nervous, so they pull back supply.
And then there are the bigger trade protections.
Right, the Section 232 tariffs. It's like a high wall around the U.S. steel market. So when our domestic demand spikes like this, we can't just easily bring in cheaper global steel to stabilize prices.
And the result of that is, what? U.S. consumers are paying nearly double the global price for the same steel.
Pretty much. Which just makes that CAP proposal to exempt materials from tariffs seem all the more urgent. And it's not just rebar. Wire rod is busy, and flat product pricing is starting to creep up too.
So let's try to summarize what this all means for you. First, contractor confidence is shaky, but it's being propped up by this very narrow, very intense demand from sectors like data centers.
Second, the housing shortage is a real 2 million unit problem. And there are ambitious policy proposals on the table that could, theoretically lower costs and boost supply.
And third, the very raw materials you would need to build those 2 million homes, especially steel, are seeing massive price hikes right now.
And those price hikes are being driven by the same industrial projects that are keeping the rest of the construction sector from sinking. It's a very tight, conflicted loop.
This whole deep dive really just underscores this incredibly complex dance between policy, demand, and cost, especially when supply is this constrained.
It absolutely does. And it leaves a really important question for you, the listener, to think about as you watch this all unfold. If these policy proposals to close that 2 million home gap actually work, and we see a massive ramp up in home building,
then what happens?
How will all that new demand for materials crash into the current tightness we're seeing? And will the soaring costs that result from that collision ultimately derail the entire affordability goal of the plan? Something to mull over.
Thank you for listening. Explore more at www.staalx.com.